Good afternoon, everyone. I want to go ahead and call our Student Success Committee meeting to order. If I can have Ms. Elizondo roll call.
Cynthia Mare,
She'll be absent.
Lupita Cepeda,
Present.
Jackie Leven Ramos,
Present.
Karina Elizondo.
Thank you. The next item I have is enrollment report update. Dr. Fred Solis.
Good evening, Madam Chair, board members, esteemed colleagues and visitors. Fred Solis, Vice President for Student Success and Enrollment for the record. Before I jump into the slides that I'm going to share with you tonight, I want to preface my presentation by saying that there's 14 days left of registration before convocation. Once convocation comes around, there's 4 more days of late registration before classes actually begin. So in total, we have about 18 more days of registration if you do not count weekends. Right now, we're currently at a point where we're comparing ourselves to the pre-COVID numbers as well as last year's numbers. And using the chart, you will see that when we look at the pre-COVID, that was fall of 2019, we had a banner year of enrollment, largely driven by a large dual credit population, which is represented in the whole year. The green represents a non-dual student enrollment. Obviously, during the COVID period, we had a different enrollment, but yet we were able to sustain some moderate enrollments at that time. Last year, we were rebounding a little bit from the COVID year. And then at this point, right now, this is where we're at in terms of our enrollment for fall. Now, if we do some comparative analysis, then we have quite a bit to go in order to reach our pre-COVID numbers that we had back in 2019. So right now, if we match ourselves to that, we're 64% behind that pace pre-COVID. Similarly, when we compare ourselves to last year, we're about 63% behind last year's pace. And so again, just want to reiterate, we have 18 days of registration that still have to take place. This number solely represents a unique head count, so this is what we would call our enrollment number. Conversely, we also have our semester credit hours. Again, fall of 19 was a better year for semester credit hours as well. We had a large contingency of non-dual semester credit hours. Followed by our fall semester 2020, which was our COVID semester. And then we rebounded a little bit from that last year. Where we're at right now, we're at 32,000 semester credit hours currently. That includes a few from dual credit and then the rest from the non-traditional or the non-dual students. Now, don't panic on the dual credit yet, simply because the school districts, as they return, they will be providing their enrollment numbers for us to register the dual credit. Regrettably, the way that operation works, we probably will not know until probably the week of convocation when we start sending us the rosters for registration. So right now, our focus is on the non-dual and trying to raise that number. If we compare ourselves again on the semester credit hours, The pre-COVID, we're 58.68% behind the pre-COVID semester, whereas we're only 55% behind last year. For contact hours, again, this is solely focused on credit courses. In the pre-COVID semester, we had 1.5 million contact hours or so. During COVID, that dropped down to 934, and then we rebounded last year to 1.3 million of contact hours. Now, again, looking at a comparative analysis, we're 57% behind where we were pre-COVID, but we're only 53% behind from last year. And again, I want to reiterate that these are combined numbers. This combines the non-dual as well as the dual numbers are combined. And so as our dual numbers and enrollments continue, then these numbers will continue to grow. For our continuing education courses or our non-credit courses, the only basis of comparison that I can provide you today is based on what we have in quarter four. Quarter four for continuing education are for the months of June, July, and August. And so again, looking at the continuing education headcount, we have our pre-COVID quarter four, which was back in 2019. At that time, we had 1,269 students enrolled in continuing ed, whereas currently we're at 611, even though this quarter has not ended yet. Quarter four for continuing ed will end until August the 31st. So there's still an opportunity for additional classes to be created before the quarter ends. Again, if we do our comparison between where we are today in quarter four 2022 versus where we were in pre-COVID, we're 51.85% behind that. When we compare our quarter four from this year to quarter four from last year, we're at 22.7% behind. So again, there's still a plenty of opportunity for continuing ed to continue developing their schedule before the end of the quarter. Additionally, because continuing ed generates contact hours only, they do not generate semester credit hours. We're tracking also their contact hour generation for quarter four. Again, back in the pre-COVID semester of quarter four 2019, we were at 24,481 contact hours. Whereas right now, currently, based on the schedule we're undergoing, we're at 18,925. So when we compare back to the pre-COVID quarter, we're at 36.9% behind that. And when we compare ourselves to last quarter, we're about 18.42% behind that. And again, contact hours will also be affected as the continuing ed continues to offer additional courses in quarter four. Are there any questions with these preliminary numbers at this time?
Any questions? Thank you, Dr. Solis. Thank you.
I'll stay because I believe
Yeah, I just noticed your name again. Fall 2022 Retention Action Plan, Dr. Fred Solis.
So I do want to call attention that we did invite Dr. Rizpon Juan to have a private session with my division, the Student Success and Enrollment Division. And he came down on April the 29th for a special session that he held with my directors. And there were other directors that were invited outside the division, whoever could attend as well. And so he came with a specific focus, and part of that focus was to bring awareness to what he is referring to as Generation Z, or the COVID generation. And some of the points and takeaways that we received from him were dealing with this new generation has gone through a lot of challenges that the old traditional methods and techniques that were used in the past are no longer applicable. And we need to throw some of that away and restart from scratch, developing new approaches to how we address this generation. So in essence, he impressed all throughout his presentation, he impressed on the group the imperative to improve the educational experience of marginalized students in LC. When we were negotiating for this particular session, he presents all over the country to different institutions. And for some institutions, they do have a diversified student population, different races, different ethnic cultures, and so on. But when we asked him to come, we told him, you're coming to, 100%, pretty much 100% Hispanic institution. But we agreed that even within that, there's differences amongst our students, right? And so he came with that purpose and that intent to create that sort of awareness of what we could else explore in looking at the diversity of our own student population. So he challenged us to focus on a new reality. He noted that there's a new term called VUCA, which is an acronym for the volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity of current times. And actually, VUCA is a business management term that's rising through the literature dealing with business management and how new leaders are going to have to adapt from their old methods of styles of leadership to the new method that allows us to address these VUCA climate times. For us as an institution of higher ed, he basically impressed that VUCA climate requires what he calls a JEDI response. And JEDI stands for the justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion of our students. You know, as an institution, like I said, because we've always considered ourselves pretty much 100% Hispanic, we've never quite considered the diversity that exists within that student population. And that's one thing that he impressed on us during this presentation. So he challenged us to reframe how we do our work to help students thrive. And in this case, he's using the word thrive to say, you know, help them work towards their best. And so he indicated to us that we need to begin by creating new messages, not only for students, but for ourselves, to indicate that we're here to help. And we got into some discussion behind some of the hidden messages that oftentimes we create unintentionally, but they go out and students interpret it a certain way when we in reality we mean it that way. And so he called it microaggression messages that sometimes go out. And so therefore we should focus on micro affirmations instead and be careful with that messaging. He also suggested that we should reconsider the realignment of some of our complementary offices to, again, put our efforts together to be able then to provide a much more robust experience for our students. He also indicated that partnering with academic departments to leverage our resources was also going to have to occur, and it would be an imperative to where we would not be working in silos, but instead we'd be working across the institution, support along with academics together. And he said it's time for us as an institution to begin practicing inclusion of marginalized groups. So we're currently in the identification of these invisible groups, these invisible students that exist within our student population, but we haven't quite identified to be able to provide much better support services to them. And so he framed the student experience around 4 major tenets. He said the student experience at LC begins with a transition to Laredo College, followed by the academic experience that the student undergoes while they're studying here, followed by the campus engagement, which is creating that sense of belonging for all students to find their purpose within the college, and then leading on to degree completion to help students find the most appropriate plan to complete a degree. So this served as the framework for then the homework that he left us with. And so that homework was worked on June the 30th, 2022. And he basically said, you have 155 days from April when he first came to develop a plan that you will implement starting in the fall. And so we had some discussions, and the focus of the discussion was to develop an action plan to help improve the student experience, which in essence will help improve the student retention component as well. And so various groups met to identify what would be some of the current issues that our students are currently facing and how we could approach resolving some of those issues. So this is the action plan that resulted from that discussion. We broke down the action plan based on the 4 student experiences that he had shared with us. So as different groups provided their suggestions, recommendations, and ideas on how to improve the transition to college, there was a consensus among the groups that we were offering limited services and activities at the high schools, and that needed to change. It almost became that group of students were marginalized because we were just not paying enough attention. And that came from the directors and the staff that were part of that discussion. For the academic experience, the group looked at perhaps engaging the engagement with struggling students early on, and be able to have the ability to identify who these struggling students are and what they're struggling with, whether they be behavioral issues that they're dealing with or academic issues that they're dealing with. So it was well noted that missing from this equation was some form of an early alert system that perhaps we could institute moving forward. For campus engagement, in those discussions, different ideas were provided by the teams. However, there was a resounding theme that was across all those groups, and that was that we lacked some form of synchronized institutional calendar to help identify what all the events are that are occurring on a daily basis, and therefore improve the ability for students to be able to participate and with enough ample time to plan out for those activities and so forth. And then for degree completion, there was a point of emphasis in terms of identifying the students who end up losing their financial aid eligibility because of their lack of academic performance. And so that was resounding across all the different teams that were gathered together, that this was perhaps one area that we could begin looking at and disaggregating that data even further and say, okay, what are the type of majors that are losing their financial aid eligibility? Are they males, are they females, et cetera, which currently we don't necessarily look at in that disaggregate form. We look at it holistically just as a number. And so the discussion was very rich, and the resulting matrix is what's before you in terms of how to approach it. So we have our work cut out. This is the imperative that we're going to be following for the fall. This will be complemented from the discussion that will follow a little bit later on in this committee meeting. And that would be the Noel Levitt's recommendations as well. So we'll see where we dovetail each other and where we may have additional elements that we're going to have to take care of coming this fall semester.
Chair recognizes Ms. Ramos.
Dr.
Yes,
Fred,
ma'am.
I like the last column, number 4, it says acquire the unbudgeted software and assign the responsibility. If I may offer a suggestion, maybe another column that would provide a detailed amount of monies that would be needed to increase the different activities.
Right.
Like, for example, with your increased contacts with dual enrolled and non-dual students, what are some of the ways that you would increase that in contact? They're isolated and not on purpose, but because they have classes, the life of a high schooler is very different than the life of a college student. But many times our dual enrolled students go through the phases during the day and they're going to school, they're going to classes and so forth. So maybe the easiest way to do that is offer them an opportunity to have access to the library. Even IDs count a lot, and that's a minimal amount of money that needs to be infused. Even just the IDs. We created IDs with Laredo College. We put the emblem, and so we distinguish our students that are taking that are in the academy. And so we have a specified ID.
That was done at your campus?
That was done at
Oh,
my
okay, I
campus,
see.
and I created the ID, so the kids knew already I'm in the academy. And so, and they were our academy students that had started last year.
Sure.
We're gonna do that again this year, and we're making a connection to the college. So they have the insignia of the college and they have the insignia of the school. And then we increase the contact, also letting them know that there's different services that can be utilized here, like at the South Campus and here in the library also as well. So we try to make the connection, but again, it's my campus, the one that I'm doing that. So it would be nice if it would be done across the board,
It's an
you know, to
institution.
other high schools as well. So
Okay.
definitely. And may I have a copy of the of the diagram?
Yes,
Can you
absolutely,
please? Thank you.
absolutely. So to all of the directors and in my division, this is our marching orders that we basically gave ourselves based on the discussions that we had and what we wanted to focus on and be able to resolve most immediately. So in conclusion, it became very apparent through the session that the new reality for students demands a unique student experience. And so it's no longer just moving them through registration process and so on, but actually taking time out to treat each student with their unique needs. It also became very evident that we need to disaggregate as much of our data as possible to help identify what these invisible groups are that exist currently in our campus and how we're reaching out to those groups if we're not currently doing so. I know in talking to Mr. Carmelino Castillo in terms of his student-like programming, he's also undergoing some training for the diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so they're already looking at some student populations that they know are not making to the events or not coming to the events that they can perhaps target as well. And then again, removing barriers across the student experience will involve everyone. Although Dr. Pong Juan did address the student support services area this go around, he did leave the door open to come back and do the instruction at a later date and actually have a talk with faculty as well in the role of faculty engagement with students too. So this concludes my presentation for this evening.
Thank you. Dr.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Solis. The next item is Student Success Report Card, Dr. David Adasola and Dr. Veronica Martinez.
Hello, members of the board. Dr. Ramirez, David Arazola, Vice President for Compliance and Risk Management for the record. We're presenting to you just a few elements of our student success report card. One of the things that we did a couple of years ago is we would present this on an annual basis. But at some point, the data does get a little bit, I don't want to say stale, but the message of presenting the same data year after year does. Right, so we always want to look for new ways to present data, new data points to present. There's always a need to. Just in looking in Dr. Fred's presentation today, 2 years ago or even last year, we weren't talking about equity and inclusion and diversity as much as we are now. Right, so those are new things that are coming up that we need to include. But so as we were putting together this presentation, I'll pass it on to Dr. Martinez, but we what do we focus on as far as what we present to the board? What does student success mean? So for us, student success means what we're presenting today is the end, right? So some of the completion metrics that we keep track of, right? So Dr. Martinez.
Thank you, Dr. Good evening, everyone. Dr. Veronica Martinez, Dean of Planning and Institutional Ethics. Good to see you all. And just to put it in context, the data sources that were used for this presentation that we're providing today are from the Texas Higher Education Accountability System and the Texas Public Higher Education Ombudsman. So they have multiple elements of key performance indicators and data elements that comprise these reports. So we're just showing you a few. And we're also using our peer group as assigned by the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. So we are part of what they call the large college. So they have small, medium, large, and very large colleges. So Laredo College fits into a large college category along with, so we're part of 9 other institutions that are listed here: Amarillo, Lynn, Central Texas, Del Mar, Navarro, North Central Texas, South Plains, and Tyler Junior College. So whenever we do a comparison, we always compare against this peer group, which is considered to be comparable to us in size. So one of the data elements that we always look at is, of course, the graduation rate. To get a picture, we always look at multiple years. So our three-year graduation year currently sits at 32.2%. This, if you rank it among the peer group that we outlined, we are in second place as far as our graduation rate. The three-year average for our school is 32.7%, and the statewide average is 25.7%. So currently we sit above the statewide average for the three-year graduation rate. It encompasses from 2018, the end of 2018, all the way to 2021. That is the last data report. Another element that we tend to always look at is the average time to degree. For Laredo College, currently we are 3.4. That's our average time to degree. The rank among our peer group, out of the 9, we rank at 3rd place among the institutions that we mentioned for time to degree. The three-year average is currently 3.6, and the statewide is the 3.6 is our three-year average, and the statewide is 3.9. So we're a little bit below or a little bit comparable to the state average. And that's something that we always look at. So we are looking at disaggregating that data to see what elements we can address. As far as we looked at dual enrollment, we saw an issue there. So those are things that we're going to be looking at so that we can expand our reach and our analysis of the data that is currently out there.
So when we do these comparisons on the student success report card, so the reason we have these 3 numbers up there is because we like to compare ourselves to 3 different elements, right? So when we look at our peer group, we'd like to compare ourselves to the large peer college group, make sure that how we're doing in comparison to them. But we also like to compare it to ourselves, right? So that's why the 3-year average is there. So make sure we're getting better ourselves, right? And then we also like to compare with the state. So this is another good number. I know you might see the line going down, but this is one of the lines that we want to go down, right? So this is the average number of semester credit hours per every graduate. Right now, we are at 72. We have been as high as 85, 88 in recent years. So, you know, I know, and I'll point out Dr. Kizina here because I know this is one of the numbers that she hangs on to as wanting to work on and wanting to get better, and kudos to her and the academic team and the team success team for taking that number down to the 72. I mean, there's room for improvement, but I mean, we have made some market improvements in that number, right? So we are ranked second in the peer group. With our 3 average is 76, so we're doing a lot better than we've done just even in the last 3 years, and certainly 10 semester credit hours below our statewide average. So that's a very positive number for Laredo College. Transfer rate is another number that's you know, the data behind it sometimes is a little bit hard to decide, where the students are, where do they transfer to, and so on. But as far as our transfer rate, we're also doing pretty well. Based on the most recent cohort, you have to kind of look at, this is 2021 data, but we're looking at the cohort data from 2017 or so. About 30% of our students are transferring out, right? So that puts us at 3rd amongst our peer group. We have increased from our 3-year average by 5 percentage points, and we are well above also the statewide. So transfer rate, that's another thing that we do well on. So these are the things that when we think about completion of what we want our students to do, we want them in here, we want them to graduate, we want them to graduate quickly, or we want them on to university, right? And those are, again, that's one element of student success that we regard as important, and we're doing well. Now, as we were reviewing the data, and we've been reviewing the data for the past couple of days or so, there are some weaknesses in not only what we see as the collection of data, but in some of the data points. We noticed that we need to do a little bit, we see some low points in the dual enrollment graduation rates, but if we think that's more attributable, I don't know, that's what it is. And we can attribute that more to, the tracking of the students, as they get out of dual enrollment. Same thing goes with some of the labor market data when we see, the rate at which our students are employed. We see that we're a little bit low compared to some of our peers. Again, probably can attribute that more to being able to track the students. So that's something that we're working on, as a team as well. We know that we need, and I kind of alluded to this earlier, we need better performance indicators, right? So the KPIs that were used 5 years ago are the same ones that we used 10 years ago, which are probably time to take a look at that and then, take a look at some different points and some different indicators of what we regard as student success in 2022. We probably did not the same view as what we had in 2012, right? We talked about making people aware of some of the data resources. We've had that training before, but I think it's time for a refresher. I know we ourselves have talked about going out there to our faculty, to our staff, and letting them know where this data is available, because there are a lot of places to get data, whether it's internally in our own website. You go to the coordinating board website. There's IPES data, tax data. There's plenty of data out there. The question is, what is it that we're looking for, right? And that's a part of trying to identify the KPIs, right? Almost the same thing for data sharing, right? So as we collect data, either internally within our own units, it's important for us to do a little bit more sharing of what some of the data that we're collecting. There's a lot of good examples of that in Dr. Kurtz's presentation. And much like we're looking at now, the state of Texas has adopted a new strategic plan called Building a Talent Strong Texas, and using that as a basis for what we define for student success is probably something that we're going to do moving forward. But that's the end of my presentation. I'll take any questions if you guys have them, or suggestions or comments.
Chair recognizes Mr. Thomas.
Dr. So that the Building a Talent Strong Texas, that replacing the 60/30,
That is
or when it finishes on
They're
the.
not gonna finish.
they're not gonna continue to do this. They because of the new change in leadership there with Dr. Heather, this is a new plan, and it's right in the middle of the 60/30. So
And you just got me started. I was just started getting used to it. I'm like, I know my numbers.
I'll explain that to you shortly.
there's some intersection between quite a bit, actually, but it's a little bit different.
And I would also like to mention, since this is a brand new committee, I remember the time when we had students that had so many semester credit hours. And we gathered together, I mean, we meaning administration and staff, to be able to help those students graduate, because they had gone beyond the number of semester credit hours. And so it was very refreshing and what a wonderful, it was wonderful to see the students graduate, because I think we had about maybe close to 2,000 students at one point. If you can remind me, Dr. Fred. And those are the students that had just kept on going and going and going. They could have already gotten a bachelor's, but going back to what Dr. Fred talked about, in addressing those students that need the assistance, because if no one gives me a roadmap, I won't guide it, and I always tell the students, whenever I get a chance to talk to them, I say, where's your roadmap? What are you gonna take? What are you gonna do? If you're not gonna follow the roadmap, then get together with the advisor and find out if you're on the right track, because you could be adding more classes than you're supposed to, and then by the time you realize it, you could be getting a master's with all the classes that you have, right? But of course, they don't follow into the discipline. But there was a time where, kids were coming up with 90 hours and they were still here. So kudos to the staff, to the administration, to the faculty also. And we just need to make sure that we continue to see what kind of a retention rates we're keeping and making sure that those kids that are leaving, why are they leaving? You know, if it's because of money, that's, you know, but if it's not because of money, one thing that I forgot to mention, with the dual enrollments is we need to address the part about the grades, the GPA. That needs to be placed a forefront for them to know the difference between the grade point average in school and the grade point average in college. And so how they all meet together. It's a difficult concept for them to understand, especially if you're coming out of 8th grade and you're already figuring out your pathway. You're like, what am I doing, right? So that a lot of the times the students take courses and then they fail them, and then they don't realize that 3 years later, it's gonna catch up to them because of the GPA. So good news on this information, the student success, and hopefully we'll get to see lower numbers or increased numbers in different areas.
The right thing.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Arezola and Dr. Martinez. The next item we have is presentation and discussion of the external review of Laredo College enrollment, management, recruitment, and marketing departments by Buffalo Noel Levitz, Dr. Melita Ramirez.
Yes, ma'am. If I may, I have copies of the report. I wanted you all to see it before we put it up on the screen. Vice presidents have seen this report already, so it's not ready for prime time, but I do want to share some key findings from this report.
Okay.
So as I mentioned to you all early in the month, we brought in Buffalo Noel Levitz, which is the premier organization in enrollment, recruitment, marketing in higher education, and how we track, how we work with students, and how community colleges and universities across the country function. And they come in and do audits and then make their recommendations. And so what I'd like to do is go over a few of these slides with you. I'm not going to go through the whole presentation. So I'd like to go through a few of these slides. First of all, on page 2, these are all the departments that were spoken to. They were here for 2 days. They met with key enrollment areas, undergraduate admissions, registrars, recruitment, financial aid, the student success office, dual enrollment, workforce development, student focus groups, and academic deans and faculty. And then, so they discussed, she had a list of questions prior to the visit. We submitted, each department submitted some of their day-to-day operational things and their SWOT analysis that I had asked them to do for review. And so to discuss what our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats were. And so they came up with items and shared with them prior to her coming. So her questioning strategies revolved on the information that she received from them and what best practices are in the work that we do in enrollment management. And so on page 4, if you look at some of the key items that were the general observations, people generally care. I want to make note of the first one, but people generally care about Laredo College, the mission, and the students that we serve. So the people that she talked to, they all have a vested emotional interest in what we're doing. But there is a lack of key goals, key performance indicators, which you heard twice already this evening. And we don't have performance metrics. We don't measure anything. We setting goals and metric based on actual market data. So as Dr. Lesola pointed out, being able to compare ourselves to what other institutions our size are doing is key. And right now, we're not really doing that, or hadn't been doing that. Reorganization is highly recommended for the Enrollment Management and Student Success Division because we have departments that are key to the function of enrollment management that aren't in enrollment management, like recruitment. It doesn't report to that department. We don't have a separate admissions office. It's all rolled into one office, and therefore, productivity, I think, is delayed because of the workload. And so, I think that there's some, technological things that we could be doing using some software that would help manage the workloads that we're not doing. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. We need a plan that prioritizes and focuses resources on strategies that will enroll and graduate the greatest number of students and get everyone aligned on the same page. Everybody seems to have a separate focus. People working in silos, there's no sharing of information from one department to another. And certainly there's no cohesive planning between the departments. And so on page 5, just a couple of the observations that were made there. There's a lack of training given to staff, and the campus has a culture that is resistant to change. And I think that's going to be very key. And I think you've heard twice already this evening, the importance of us making sure that we're meeting the demands and needs of our student populations, and certainly of our faculty as well. And I don't think we're doing that as effectively as we could. Expand on the pathways to ensure that students understand the benefits of the education they receive at Laredo College, and that their outcomes are what they wanted in the first place. How do we align that? The outbound and inbound communication, as well as customer service, needs to improve. I know some of you have brought that to my attention numerous times about how our customer service is not at the level that it should be, and what can we do to improve that? Internal silos exist and need to be addressed. That was very obvious in her speaking to our own employees and how they were very adamant about how, you know, certain offices had done this and I could have done my job better. And so there was a lot of that finger pointing going on about, well, so-and-so didn't do this and so-and-so didn't do that, so I couldn't do my part of the job. And the idea is, how do you break down those barriers and create a more cohesive communication plan internally that goes along with a strategic enrollment plan and a strategic retention plan that we're also concerned about. The biggest concern for that is, I was at TAC last week, and the commissioner was very adamant, as were the state representatives that came to speak to us at the conference, about how in this next session, the probability of the change in how community colleges get funded is at an all-time high. That we should be looking at this session as the last session we're ever going to have. They have a surplus of $27 billion right now. 13 to 14 billion of that is going to go into the rainy day fund. And the rest is going to get divided amongst security, highways, and education. And so where does that leave us? There is a belief in Austin that our students need to have skin in the game. That if they're not committed to their education, then why are we spending money on them? And so the funding is going to shift from the number of students we start the semester with to the number of students we finish with. So funding is probably going to change to outcome-based funding. And therefore, these strategies that we're going to try to implement this fall are gonna be critical to our existence. Because making sure that students stay the course and don't drop out after they receive their financial aid check. Because you asked a question about why are students leaving? Is it money? We have one of the highest number in student population which receive Pell Grant. And therefore, they don't pay anything for their education here. They really don't. Pell Grant covers all of their tuition and fees, and they still get a refund. And so the idea that it's money, without having the data in front of me to validate that at 100%, I can tell you that I'm about 95% sure that the reason our students are leaving is not money. It's more personal reasons. I'm sure there are other reasons that students leave school, but we have to make it so that they want to stay. It's our job to create that campus climate where students want to be here because they feel that they're cared about, that what they're doing here has value, and that it's going to be the greatest investment of their life to change the outcomes of their life. And so as we go through this, on page 6, develop a solid return on investment for academic, student services, and extracurricular activities. We are not keeping data on any of our programming. So we don't even know, I mean, if we have an event and 15 people show up, well, that's a good thing. Well, and then are we tracking that? Like, how do we know? Did that event help the student stay in school? Are we tracking that to be able to say, because this student came to 3 of our events, he didn't drop out? Because we talked to him at 3 different events, or he participated all semester long. He came every Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday to work out at the rec center, and so he spoke to somebody. We don't know any of that because we're not tracking that. So we don't know what our return on investment is. Improve financial aid leveraging to implement long-term revenue projections for cost certainty. We're not using our award letters for recruitment, and we should be. Our award letters are an afterthought. Our award letters need to go out in the end of February, when students are making a decision whether or not to come to school. The same in the fall semester. We're sending them out very late in the game. And so new students, regardless of whatever program they're in, the minute they apply, they should be able to get an award letter from us. So we have to back up when our tuition and fee tables are ready and when we send out award letters. Because quite frankly, we're producing them very late in the game. And so as we do that, students are unaware that they're going to get a $1,500 refund already. Well, I mean, that's a car payment for 3 months, right? So why aren't we using what was already in place to help us help our students? Develop a culture, the last one on that page is develop a culture that is centered on the student. Continually asking the question, is this in the best interest of our students? And I think we need to keep that in the forefront of everything and every decision that we make from here on in. Is this going to help our students grow and succeed? I'm going to skip over to page 9. Quite a lengthy report, and we'll have a shorter report for the meeting on Thursday for the entire board. But in recruitment, marketing, admissions, and registrar high-level observations, I wanted to point out there is no recruitment or strategic enrollment management plan currently in place for the campus. And as I mentioned earlier, recruitment doesn't align with enrollment management. 2 separate entities reporting to 2 separate people. There are no key goals, key performance indicators, or performance metrics. Students cannot inquire on the website. They can only apply. We know that our website is not for external use right now, and therefore, where do we send our students? How do you do that? There's a strong need for social media presence to make sure students are engaged during the enrollment process. How can we make this happen quickly? We have a lot of social media presence, but we're referring students to campus-wide things instead of directing them and calling them to action. And I think there's a difference. When we do a commercial, there needs to be a call to action. What do we want the student to do? And so we're gonna try to do some shifting of calling students to action, or prospective students to action, or prospective community members to action. What are we expecting them to do? We haven't gotten there yet. And so, I mean, you can read through the whole thing. If you'll skip to page 20. In financial aid, as I was mentioning earlier, and I know that cost is always a big question. We need to analyze our current scholarship awarding strategies to maximize the positive impact. Right now, the scholarships that we give, students have to go to the donor office to ask them for a scholarship, instead of that being part of the award letter that we give out at the beginning of the year. Why are we doing that? And why don't we have a centralized scholarship application where everybody can apply to? And we put the metrics of each scholarship into the system, into Banner, so that the system automatically awards that, and you remove that whole idea. And I don't think it's happening, but there's this idea, well, you know, if you know somebody, you get a scholarship. Well, no, you have to meet a criteria to get a scholarship, right? And you have to apply to get a scholarship. So we have one general scholarship application, and then you put the metrics into the system does the awarding. So you remove that whole concept, perception of, you know, there's favoritism in this. No, the computer does it. It can do it for us. We just have to set it up that way. We need to load our ISARs in October and use as possible recruiting tool, which I mentioned earlier. The ISAR is the student's expected family contribution to, once you do your FAFSA, the student will receive what's called an ISAR, right? And that tells the student what their EFC is, or the expected family contribution. The closer you get to zero, the more Pell Grant you're gonna get, right? And that's always a big question. What's the magic number for? I don't know, the government has their own formula. But as soon as we get those, and the FAFSA is open October 1st. So we need to start uploading ISARs for the following fall of 23 this October. And award letters can go out very early on in the middle of February or March. Most people are doing that now. That's why the government pulled back the date which students can apply for financial aid. And so how do we use that to our advantage? And so I think that's a big plan. Make sure outreach is done to all FAFSA non-applicant filers. The idea there is we get a lot of FAFSAs done because it's now required at the high school for graduation. And not all of those students apply to Laredo College. So how do we extract that data if we have them in the system already? If we're uploading the ISAR, we should be able to run a report. I think Albert's in the room, but we should be able to run a report that says all these students have financial aid, but they haven't applied. So why aren't we reaching out to them? And if so, how are we reaching out to them? Are we sending them a text? Are we sending them an email? Are we sending them a letter? Are we sending them a postcard? We should be doing everything, not just one, right?
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Chair recognizes Ms. Ramos. Dr. Ramirez, there are some minimal who opt out.
Correct.
Of the FAFSA. filling out the FAFSA.
And they
And
can,
they can.
and because I think the presumption is my parents make too much money, I'm not gonna get anything.
Yes.
There are some who are Texas residents, not US citizens, and therefore instead of filing a FAFSA, don't know that they could be filing a TASFA.
Yes.
And so they may still qualify for state aid. That needs to be communicated, I think, even to those students who opt out, because I think there may be a certain fear of filing, and so therefore they don't file at all, and they miss out on some opportunities.
I like to remind my students that no matter what, if you decide to stay here and you don't get financial aid, if you go out of town, they might be able to help you because of the family contribution.
That's correct.
So a lot of the students don't know this, and so it's important to share that with the students, especially those that they're filling out the information. I know Dr. Ortiz went and assisted, and the rest of the enrollment and management team went to fill out financial aid forms and everything, but
There was a
we
huge
can start
push.
at we can start at in the beginning, which is the freshmen. The freshmen need to know that what the expectation is, for that's a goal that they need to reach to be able to fill out that financial aid form.
And that's always a conundrum, Ms. Ramos, having enough staff to actually work all the way down to the freshman year. Because, you know, it seems like you're always rushing to work with the seniors. And then hopefully you get in, by the spring semester, we should already be working with the juniors. But in the fall semester of, like, right now, we're already working with next fall's incoming class, or should be. Because it's an 18-month, it's really an 18-month recruitment cycle. That's what you should have. And so how do you back everything up for 18 months? That means you've got to have your tuition tables done early on. That means you've got to have a decision made about what your tuition and fees are going to be earlier. But all of that gets backed up. And so your recruitment cycle, your marketing cycle, all of that is 18 months out. And getting on that cycle takes time. It's, yes, ma'am.
Chair recognizes Ms. Elizondo.
Going back to the marketing aspect, I want to congratulate you and the marketing department, because I've been seeing a lot of ads in the newspaper, Facebook, and the call to action is enroll today, enroll today, enroll today. So I think just that repetitive aspect, it's engaging individuals.
And it's a small thing, right? It's that small call to action that we have to remind people all the time. Come and enroll now. You can register today, you can apply today, you can, if you haven't applied for financial aid, you can still apply for financial aid. The deadlines are open right now. So really, the deadline is the first class day. But even then, there's still an opportunity because we have a flex schedule. And so while we may have a later start for a different set of students, people don't realize that. So there's always hope. There's always someone to help. And if you're not sure, ask. That's what we're here for. That's what we get paid for. We chose to be here. We all, as employees, chose to teach here and work here, and our mission is to serve, right? So,
For the students.
yes. And so, couple more slides, more things to share with you. If we'll jump to page 25, I don't want to belabor this. Pardon me, go to page 21, because I think this is a couple of really important points that Noel Levitt's found was customer service needs to be at the forefront of everything we do in every single office, whether we're dealing with a faculty member, whether we're dealing with a parent, whether we're dealing with a student, or a community member at large who's interested in possibly taking a continuing ed class. Everybody is important to the survival of this college. And so, customer service needs to be at the core of everything we do. We need to utilize the various channels of communication, as they are very limited outreach beyond award letters. We don't have, for example, we don't have a admissions packet. We send out an award letter on a text, but we don't send the student a welcome pardon me, a welcome to Laredo College, welcome to Laredo College packet, and they expect. And the wider the packet, the greater the excitement, right? And so we don't have that yet. Yes, ma'am.
I think when you started talking about this presentation, I think that you made reference to something extremely important, the overlapping of different offices. The excessive workloads can become an obstacle to delivering great customer service, not only to students, but also among here. So I think it's a great observation. I think we're going on the right direction, and it's awesome that you're already noting that, because it is a problem, right?
And we have to be realistic with staff. I mean, can they really be doing 4 jobs? I mean, are we being realistic? I mean, it's exhausting, right? So we have to be cognizant of that. Tuition and fees on the Laredo College website are from 2021. They're not updated. And so now, we know the website is gonna change, and I keep getting told that it's almost finished, it's almost finished. And so we're working on that, and we all know that, but it's, again, I just needed to point that out. The net price calculator is buried and not showing the value of the Laredo College education. So the net price calculator is required by law. We have to have that readily available to students, and I believe the law says 3 clicks from the main page. And, right, Albert? It's 3 clicks from the main page? Yeah. And so we don't have that right now, but we will. We will, and with the new website. So, anyway, so there's some room for growth and improvement. On page 25, there is a tremendous need to improve student and staff engagement focused on different activities, and we've talked about that in some of the things we're looking at doing for the fall semester, and some of the realignment that we want to do. There's a strong need to create a more vibrant student life and engage students to stay on campus. And we talked about this yesterday at Finance Committee as well, what we're planning to do with some of the CARES money, the HERF money that we still have, to try to engage students and to keep them on campus, to create more student employee positions on campus. We understand that gas prices are really high, and it's difficult for students to come to the campuses, either the South Campus or here, and then go to work, and then maybe come back for a night class. So if we can get them to study here and work here and eat here, then we're taking care of the whole student, and not just the learning aspect of a student. And so the idea is to try to be everything to everyone. Absolutely. Yeah, and there is a lot of data out there that shows the direct correlation between students who work on campus and graduation rates. And so that's very helpful. Consider office hours that meet the needs of students. And so this one is to be discussed. And so right now we're staying open till 6 o'clock. There may be a couple of days out of the week where we may stay open a little bit later and flex some of our employees to try to give those working students an opportunity to get their paperwork and things done, even, at 6:30 or 7 in the evening. And so the idea of giving employees an opportunity to flex schedule, because sometimes we have issues that we need to take care of personally as well. And so this maybe once a month gives an employee the opportunity to come in at 10 and get out at 7, and that might work better. So, we're gonna play with that one.
Before you go any further, Chair recognizes Dr. Solis.
And to that point, Dr. Ramirez, we've already planned to have extended hours the week of August the 8th. through the 13th.
I'm looking at the whole semester.
So-
Mr. Solis.
For what's left, for what's left of the semester, so we are gonna be staying open till 7, Monday through Thursday. Fridays, regular hours, 8 to 12, but then we're gonna have a Saturday session, 10 to 2 as well. For that last push right before convocation.
So, I mean, those kinds of things are good, but ideally throughout the semester, right? To have a couple of days out of the week to still remain open, I think makes a difference. And create a robust orientation program that really includes all departments across campus. Right now, we're having orientation sessions and, you know, if we get 10 or 15 students to show up at an orientation, it's a success. And so we have them twice a week. Ideally, that's not the way to run an orientation program. You want to have fewer orientations, but you want the groups to be larger. You want a minimum of 200 students at a time because you want them to create a campus community. And so they start to meet a lot of people that they didn't know. And then they have a good time, but at the same time, they're getting information they need. They should meet faculty members. They should meet, you know, the deans or chairs. They should meet key people from campus and get information that they need to, you know, to survive through the years. And so, you know, that's to be worked on as well. On page 26, we need to connect the academic with the career opportunities and share outcomes. And I think our outcomes are good, as you saw earlier. I don't know that we're sharing them with each other. And therefore, again, working in silos is not efficient. A campus-wide advising training needs to be conducted to ensure all faculty, staff, and administrators are giving students this, I would say, not say the right information, I would say the same information. Because we have numerous entities or numerous groups. For example, we have LEAPS, we have TRIO, we have Upward Bound, we have the advising office, we have the student success office, we have financial aid, and everybody's giving information. And not always are they giving the same information, right? So how do we align that? How do we make that aligned so that everybody's getting trained by the same person? And so I think that there's a way to do that. I know there's a way to do that. So anyway, staffing levels were voiced as a concern along with burnout, which is the point you brought up, Mr. Elizondo. I think we need to really focus on how do we help our employees work smarter, not harder. And how do we give them the appropriate support to do that? We need to develop a data-driven approach. We need a system that supports these efforts. Data is everything, and our decision-making needs to be founded on data. And the more data that we collect, and as you can see, there's a lot of data out there, but I had never seen Dr. Fred's presentation. And so I didn't know that data existed. And, you know, so you go on the coordinating board website, you go on the National Clearinghouse website. I mean, there's a lot of places where there's data, but how are we using that to make decisions? And so I think that's critical. And how do we use it so that the average person can understand it when we're making decisions using that? And so I think that's, we really need to streamline advising to ensure that all students are advised equally, and that's another part of the advising process. You have a question? Oh, okay. On page 31, I'm almost done, I promise. On page 31, I wanted to share this because she met with a group of students, and I found it very interesting, the responses of the students. The students in the focus group love Laredo College and everything it has to offer. But the top reason they chose Laredo College was, yes, cost, but it was more proximity to home and specific program offerings. And it's a safe option if they don't know what to do next. And so I think that speaks to where we are as a society today. I think there's a huge need for security support where people feel safe. And, while when we were growing up, not even my generation, when we were growing up, people couldn't wait to leave home to go to college. Now I think the data shows that students, more and more students are going to school within 90 miles from home. They're staying closer to home. And so we need to be their first option. We need to be their first choice, not default. We want to be choice number one. There needs to be a more campus programming. We're working on that. And students do not have a positive experience working with the support services office and do not get a response to phone calls or emails back to customer service. They feel like if they didn't work on campus, they would not know what to do. And I think that is very, very clear message to all of us. And there are a few more things there, but I think that was real key. On page 35, we have some responses from faculty and the deans. And I thought that was very telling. By the way, I was not sitting in any of these meetings, and so there was no influence there. So the dean's actions and some of their recommendations were to improve the value proposition and selling points for each academic program. Identify a process to communicate academic changes to the support services. So when we make changes on the academic side, how do we tell that to the rest of the campus community? How do they know that we made a change to a degree? And so we need to be cognizant of that. Create a faculty recruitment committee to empower the faculty to assist in creating initiatives which will incorporate faculty into the process. It's imperative. It's part of their role as faculty. We need their opinions. I've read 3 of their opinions, and all 3 are of high quality and could be hugely useful to us. They need to conduct degree counseling earlier in the process. Some efforts are being made, but this isn't important to scale. So, and they're right. We need to be proactive in our outreach. Because right now it's inconsistent for academic advising. We need to create a standard flow of outreach that is consistent all the way through. We need to create data reports to share with the deans and the faculty in order to inform them of the current recruitment and retention process. And so, ideally, in the ideal world, we know that recruitment and retention is everybody's responsibility. It's not one office, it's not one person, it's everybody's. And what was nice about this exercise was that we found out from our academic partners and our students that everybody's willing to take on that responsibility. We just haven't asked them. We just haven't included them in the process. And so we need to include them. And I think that the more we share, the more data we share, the more transparent we are with what we're doing, not just with you all, but with the entire campus community, I think the more people will take ownership of the work they're doing. If we provide them with the right tools and the right support, I think that we'll be able to get people to the level where we want them to be. And lastly, how can Noel Levitt help us? So we're gonna propose a program where we're gonna partner. We'd like to partner with Buffalo Noel Levitt's. We do have some funding available through HERF to contract them for an extended period of time where they can help us manage and control some of these ideas and some of these strategies and help our staff and help give them the support and training that they need to feel like what they're doing not only has value, but to feel successful. Any questions?
I just want to say,
Yes, Mrs. Ramos.
this is a wonderful opportunity. We're gonna charter a different course of action. And to assess and to evaluate what we have right now and how we can move forward. And I always underscore we, because I consider myself a part of this family. I always have. So I always think that we can always do better. I'm at a certain age right now, and I sometimes feel like some individuals where they're like, I can't take any change, I can't accept the change, but as we've seen in the last 2 years, change came and we made it work, right? We survived. So I just want to tell everyone that this is not like, for me, it's not like, oh my, no, it's a wonderful opportunity to gather our data, to arm ourselves and to empower ourselves to move forward and say, what are we gonna do next, right? And so, I'm gonna dust the, pants off and get ready and start going and tell me what I need to do, and, as a board member, what are my roles?
And there will be.
Yeah, so I want to tell you that, I mean, from my perspective as an educator, I see what goes on, I see with the kids and administration and the registering, and I register kids too, believe it or not, I'm a librarian, but I register kids too, and I know that there's always a plan, and the execution and the evaluation leads all to our benchmarks. How are we going to make ourselves better? We are, after all, the #1 college, so
That's correct.
why can't we polish ourselves up and say, what else do we need to do so that we can keep that standing in order?
Well, and remember, the hardest thing to do is manage and maintain that #1 status. Once you get there, how do you stay there? Because now everybody else is riding on your coattails and trying to beat you, right? So how do we get to that next level?
Sí
And
se puede.
sí, claro que sí. And here's the thing, I think everybody coming to an awareness of what it is that we're doing and how we're doing things, but bringing in the support to help us. I'll give you an example. One of the softwares that we really need for not only our advising for our faculty to be able to use, but and our staff, but for our students to be able to see their own progress is DegreeWorks. And it's been sitting here for a couple of years now, and we haven't been able to fully implement it because we just haven't. The days aren't long enough, and stuff happens, right? And so how do we do that? Well, Mr. Chavez is gonna give us the support and help to do that. And we'll see a presentation on Thursday as well from his group that's gonna help us do that and do it quickly so that people are armed, like you say, that are armed with the tools they need to do their academic advising in an easy way. To give students options and scenarios. This is what you're doing. All right, if you take these classes, this is what's gonna happen. If you take these classes, this is what's gonna happen. That's what DegreeWorks does for you. And we can't do that yet, Alec. We're doing that, but we're doing it manually. We're creating these what if schedules. Well, it takes 45 minutes, an hour and a half with each student. That's
A lot of time.
That's a lot of time. Yes, we lost the kid already, right? So how do we help the team do their jobs more efficiently, work smarter, not harder? And I think that we have a huge opportunity with Noel Levitz. I think that both Dr. Bonjuan and Noel Levitz is telling us the same thing. We really need to do some realignment. I'll give you that proposal on Thursday as well, of what we're going to do that realignment. But I think that as we move to the future, I think it's very exciting. I think our our opportunities are, I told you all this at the beginning, our challenges are the same as our opportunities, and it's gonna be fun. And I think our students, our faculty, and our staff are gonna enjoy when we have the campus bustling again, and students are on campus, and the offices are getting the support they need, because we're gonna hire our students to work here. And who better to have that vested interest in the success of our college than our own students? And so, I think we're all headed in the right path. The team is very excited. Everybody's really looking forward to it. When we got the results yesterday, I think the first thing we all kind of gasped, and we took that gut punch and then said, okay, now let's go. What are we gonna do, right? And everybody had some really valuable, strong questions, and but nobody backed down. Everybody said, all right, how are we gonna do this? Since I've stepped up to the plate right away, Mr. Vela was like, okay, what are we gonna, how do we do this? And how do we make this work for everybody? And yes, you all will be part of this new chartered pathway, right? And so, but like I said, I think we're gonna have a good time, and I think we're gonna make a difference in people's lives.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ramirez, and I'm excited for all of us. I'm looking forward to continue working with everyone. I think all our board members are also willing to step up to the plate. What we need to do, we'll do. And to continue, taking care of business and continue being the #1 college. So I want to thank everybody that's here and everybody that works for the college, and our students that attend, our past, present, and future students. Thank you for everything that you do. And with that, our meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Have a good evening.